new framework and an implementation of the old framework for handling BibTeX databases. I can't be with you in Trivandrum this afternoon, but I will be available online, network permitting, after the talk to answer any questions you might have, and I look forward to that. The overall structure of what I'm going to talk about just now is, first of all, a mention of the overall goals of the Beastie programme, an illustration of the programme's functionality, some thoughts on the state of BibTeX documentation and possibly the future, and well, some other remarks about the future of BibTeX. Beastie is a parser and processor for BibTeX databases, .bib files. It also includes a Markdown parser and a BST parser as part of its job. It also includes a rich library of primitives for handling .bib databases and parsing them and processing them to produce output. It's implemented in Scheme, an excellent high-level programming language, specifically a version called S7 Scheme, which is designed for embedding. And the program overall is rich enough as a sort of proof of functionality that it's straightforward to implement the BST language in the Beastie framework. I also mentioned that it is an end-to-end solution in the sense that there's no external software required for parsing or for formatting, although it is intended to be friendly to any downstream processors. The main goals of the program are to explore ways of processing .bib files which are not exclusively based on .bst. It includes BST, but that's not the main goal. And thus it's not exclusively focused on outputting .bbl files for the processing by LaTeX. It's intended, as I say, to be friendlier to arbitrary downstream processing. As part of this, there's a need for some explicitness about the .bib syntax, which is otherwise a little vague in some places, but I'll have a bit more to say about that. And a second implementation of the BST language, which is otherwise one of those single implementation languages, which so worry computer scientists. And as part of this whole thing, the goal is to start some sort of conversation about BibTeX standards and documentation. The implementation of the BST language adds a couple of features and slightly better error messages. I'll mention those in a moment. Now, sub-goals of this are that I do at some point want to release a version 1.0, which has been a bit of an issue for BibTeX in the past. In terms of functionality, the program is written so that it can be a drop-in replacement for BibTeX the program. Now, it's not because I want BibTeX the program to go away, it's just that I want to let the current program make my interface choices for me. So it's intended to be designed to be compatible, fully compatible with BibTeX. Fully compatible with BibTeX, but not bug for bug necessarily. And it's of course Unicode friendly. Now that's partly because any serious program now has to be Unicode friendly, but also the case transformations that it includes and the word recognition that it includes are compatible with and derived from Unicode. And really the initial motivating problem, the itch that needed scratched, was I wanted to absorb a .bib database into an SQL database, and doing that using BibTeX and BST files required a certain amount of BST knowledge, which not everyone has, and also some rather ugly tech hackery. So I wanted to make that was the bounded case that I wanted to make easier. This obviously is not the only BibTeX related software that exists. There's quite a lot of other stuff. BibTeX is very well known, and it uses BibTeX or Biber to parse the bibliography, and interestingly it uses TeX or LaTeX as the bibliography formatting language at the back end of it. Jabref is a database management application user interface which is somewhat scriptable, and BibTool is both a program and a library for parsing and transforming BibTeX databases. And the BibTool, the list of BibTool example programs are all of them, I think, quite interesting illustrations of what would be compact Beastie programs. And if we were to reorganise time, I think Beastie would be an excellent framework in which to implement BibTool. That's maybe where it's useful to think of Beastie as living. So I'm talking about partly not replacing or walking alongside BibTeX. So what's the problem with BibTeX? The biggest thing, from at least some points of view, it works very well, but it is rather loosely documented, to put it fairly politely. Some features in the LaTeX book are described as being, quote, like Scribe, even though no one has heard of Scribe, and Scribe is mostly now famous for being the thing that BibTeX is not. And part of that informality is there isn't any real formal syntax for BibTeX, and so not much in the way of rules for what isn't allowed. Secondly, the BST language, which has its amusement value, could politely be described as esoteric, and that's true even for those of us who think that TeX is a fairly sensible programming language, possibly a minority opinion. BibTeX and BST files work very well, but targeting non-BBL, non-LaTeX output is possible but inelegant. And also, I think this is a constant background nagging issue. BibTeX is Unicode-compatible, but mostly in a way by accident. BibTeX, the original program, is ASCII only. BibTeX 8, which is a more recent friendly fork of BibTeX with larger internal limits and the support for national alphabets, is at least 8-bit clean. And BibTeX U is another version of BibTeX which is deliberately, explicitly compatible with Unicode in the sense of having Unicode-compatible sorting and case transformation adaptations in the BST language. So these aren't fatal flaws, but they are niggling issues. So what can Beastie do? The most straightforward thing is exactly what you expect. You run a program through a document through LaTeX. You run Beastie on the .aux file to produce a .bbl file. You run it through LaTeX the required number of times thereafter to do its job. It will work. It will do the same thing. Beastie will do the same thing. As I say, it's an implementation of the .bst language, which intends to be drop-in compatible. It does, however, add a couple of extra features. So the BST language I've slightly expanded with the inclusion of a show stack primitive, which shows the stack but doesn't pop it, which is useful, and a couple of functions related to formatted printing, each of which, none of which are model shattering, but all of them will, I hope, be of interest to BST authors. These are not, as I say, world-shattering, but they illustrate that extending the language is, at this point, fairly easy. It's just a matter of code. Also, the Beastie implementation of the BST language, it provides somewhat better error reporting. Not amazing, but it can do a little more than the BST implementation in BibTeX can. And also, in the process of that, there are a few documentation anomalies which popped up, which I won't go through here, but I'll possibly mention in the proceedings article, which is to come. And here's an illustration of a Unicode-rich .bib file. Things I want to point out here are the field values can be Unicode compatible. That's not surprising. I also entry keys can be Unicode strings, and as can individual field names. And there are also some percent comments, which I'll briefly mention later. It's compatible with things like the usual syntax for describing accented characters, but those are parsed fairly early on in a way I'll illustrate in just a moment. So no surprises, no big surprises there. But having parsed that, the next step is to write programs to transform it. And I'm not going to go through the program here. It's a full-featured programming language, and this is idiomatic scheme. This is not a long program. This is just the end of a few dozen line program. No, it's not Lua, but Scheme is an excellent language for embedding and for general purpose programming. It's the best language. As an illustration of what can be done, the distribution includes some example programs. The first one is just a sort of standard, almost a hello world for this sort of software, taking an aux file and extracting from a bibliography just the bibliography entries which are mentioned in the aux file. In this case, we can do that with a couple of different output formats, including, in this case, crossref. And you can see here that the character that was in the bib file as a /=a has been at this point parsed to the Unicode character it corresponds to. Again, no major surprises there. The point is that the program here is just a scheme program which can be made arbitrarily more complicated. And this brings us on to some thoughts about BibTeX in general and standards of .bib files. As I mentioned earlier, the BibTeX specifications, such as they are, consist of the LaTeX book and the BibTeX doc PDF file that is distributed along with from CTAN. And the documentation in the LaTeX book is somewhat informal and has a variety of ambiguities in it. So there are some questions about is such and such valid or not, which are really answered only by, well, BibTeX accepts them, so I suppose that means they're valid, which is a somewhat unsatisfactory situation if you want to write other software which parses BibTeX databases or passes them on downstream. In original BibTeX, non-ASCII characters do not exist. As I mentioned earlier, there are variants of BibTeX which are fairly widespread now, which can cope with those more or less smoothly, but they are not really the standard. They are informal extensions. The BST syntax and the semantics of that language are better documented. There's the BTX hack.pdf document which comes along again with BibTeX, but there are still one or two ambiguities, and all of these other BibTeX variants still refer to BibTeX 1.0 as coming soon in a rather irritating way. Now, a little while ago, Nelson Beebe published an article in Tugboat, excellent article which I warmly endorsed to you, which discussed some of these problems. Nelson suggested a formal grammar for the .bib files. He published some validation and transformation tools.
He suggested some modest syntactic extensions, namely comments in the .bib file which went from a percent to the end of the line, and an include form which simply includes another .bib file into a main one, with some use cases that he discusses there. He also suggested trying to narrow down a little what the permitted syntax was for entry reference and field names to say to this regular expression. That was, as I point out, nearly 32 years ago. That's a long while ago, and nothing much really has changed. I agree with all of these points, with some qualifications about this name pattern. So Beastie's take on those is, yes, there is an explicit grammar, which I could talk about a little more, but the point is explicit. It deals with the transformation issue by suggesting you write your own tools, and with a high-level programming language to do that. It implements the percent comments and the include form that Nelson recommends, and has a slightly different view of rules for the field and cross-reference names. On that topic, my proposal, and this is implemented in Beastie, is that the entry key should be a sequence of Unicode alphabetic characters, which overlaps with ASCII's A to Z, digits, symbols, which will overlap with these ASCII characters here, plus a couple of other things there for pragmatic reasons. That's a fairly generous list of characters in that entry key, but it does exclude some things. It's not just random bytes in that key. The field names have a somewhat more restricted set of rules, just word characters, digits, and the dash. That's less significant because there are a small number of standard field names anyway. There are rather few standard field names, all of which are all ASCII anyway, so this is unlikely to cramp anyone's style. And these, I suggest, should be case sensitive, and these case insensitive. I would expect these suggestions to be uncontroversial. My feeling is that if you're using keys which violate these, then you are really asking for trouble. But you have got away with it so far. I would like to suggest, and perhaps we can bring this up in the comments, that it'd be good to have some sort of agreement about this, but I don't know how one goes about starting that particular conversation. As I mentioned, the BibTeX documentation gestures toward the special treatment of escapes inside level 1 braces. And it treats these in its character counting, for example, as single characters. Excellent idea. I suggest what Beastie does is it converts those to the corresponding Unicode character fairly promptly in the parsing process. Beastie also permits a chain of cross-ref indicators within the BibTeX database, but currently still requires that none of these are backward pointing. They have to all be forward references. And it would be nice, I'll just drop this thought in here, it would be nice to assemble some sort of registry of BibTeX extension fields, such as URL, ISBN and DOIs, and a few fairly widespread but not standardized entry types, such as @webpage. But again, I don't really know how to start that registry or that conversation. So, wrapping up, where does this lead forward to in future? This is a beta release of Beastie. It's version 0.11. As such, I regard the interface as still being unstable, and so I'm
comfortable making backward incompatible changes. I want to make those changes if they are necessary as a result of comments and suggestions from people who use the program, and so I heartily encourage people to experiment with the program as it is and tell me what feels uncomfortable. These are backward incompatible changes. This is still a beta, but there will be a version 1.0. Is a very firm goal. I think I may have mentioned that already. Another possible future thing is there's a thing called the citation style language standard, which is an XML specification of how bibliographic entries should be formatted. I haven't implemented a CSL processor, but I have had it in mind that sort of thing should be easy with the facilities that Beastie provides. There's also a plain formatting program, which is the analog of the plain.bst formatting style in standard BibTeX distribution. That's still fairly rudimentary. I can look forward to expanding that in future. And that brings me to the end. A couple of links, mention of the current version number, currently released version number, a pointer to the canonical homepage, and to the repository where the code lives and the issue system is there. That's all I have to say about Beastie. I hope that we can now have, I can look forward to some exciting and penetrating questions from you in the time we have left in this slot. Thank you for your attention.
So perfect. It looks like we have Norman online to answer your questions. So does anyone have a question?
I do hope so.
Boris has a question?
If I understand you correctly, you still are going to support the old BST format, because we have hundreds of thousands of legacy BST files. It would be catastrophic if we cannot process them anymore.
Yes, for two reasons. The first is for exactly the reason you mentioned, that there's a huge amount of legacy there, but also because really one of the main motivations for implementing the BST language was just to show I could, in a sense, to prove that there was enough functionality in the BST framework that it was a relatively straightforward project to implement BST. So I think that would remain core to the program. If that is a full enough answer.
Any other questions? Yes, Eric.
Do you happen to know the program LaTeX Make, or MK?
I know of it. I've never used it.
Okay.
I don't think, other than just to play around with.
Yeah. So my question would be if it also supports Beastie or the other.
Well, it should do, in the sense that to the extent that Beastie is potentially a drop-in replacement for BibTeX, you invoke it in the same way as you invoke BibTeX. So that would, if BibTeX works, then Beastie. If BibTeX works, then Beastie should work as well.
Okay.
Other questions? Yep.
Hello, thanks for the presentation, Norman. That was very insightful. You said that you have formalized maybe the syntax for the bib files that you're supporting. Is that something that's available anywhere? I've certainly been in the problem of trying to figure out what characters can go where.
Indeed, yes. I think there are two aspects to that. First of all is the overall syntax of of bib files. And Nelson Beebe in the paper I mentioned has I think it's basically a Bison or Yak syntax for that. I also have a syntax for that, which I think is basically equivalent. The actual parsing framework I was using was slightly different, but it has a written down syntax. So that can certainly be shared from multiple places, and they should all be compatible. There's a separate issue, which is the lexing, so what counts as a string. And certainly, as I mentioned there, in fact, I should have it here. My opinion there is that there is a fairly short list of things which should be regarded as legitimate entry keys and field names. The field names aren't important because they're a very small set of those. I think that's where there would be more dispute potentially, because this, although it's fairly simple, does exclude some things. It doesn't include just random bytes. So I think those are two separate things. But I certainly could share the overall syntax that I have, as well as pointing toward Nelson's in that paper.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, or were you thinking of something rather different?
No, I think that answers my question. Yeah, I guess it's a question of, does it survive contact with the real world?
Oh yes, very much so, and that's one reason why I think now is the right time in the program's development for other people to use it and break it. So I'm very keen to hear of things breaking when it encounters the real world, because I try to be as twisted in my test cases as I can, but being twisted is never as twisted as the real world.
Right, that's brilliant. Thanks.
Oh, there's a question from the chat.
Oh yes.
I think it's David Carlisle who asks whether scheme is available in all OSs that are supported by TUG Live. Thank you.
The scheme in question is built into the program. It's a scheme S7, a very nice little scheme, which is distributed as source code. So it's one file that you drop into your distribution. It's primarily intended as an extension language, and so there's no separate download. It's not a case of compiling, downloading a scheme, compiling the program using that. It's built into the program, so it's as portable as Beastie is. But that's a very important point, because that is one of the things that makes one choose between different scheme implementations, because they're all different.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Hi, Norman. So would like to know how Crossref helps Beastie.
What helps Beastie?
Crossref.
Crossref.
Yeah.
Crossref, yes. Yes. Sorry, I misheard you. Crossref doesn't help Beastie as much as that was an example of output from the program. There's I think, did I pass it there? Yes. So Beastie doesn't read in Crossref, but it outputs it to some extent as an exercise, because this extract bib program is the standard thing that any bibliographic tool would have to implement. It's a sort of hello world of bibliographic parsers. Can you read in a BibTeX database and dump it out again? With selections. And it was actually a suggestion from Carl Berry that it would be useful, hint hint, if this could output Crossref, and it was a very quick job. So again, that was really a demonstration of the range of possibilities. Is that what you meant?
Yes.
Any other questions? Or Norman? Yes, we have one more.
Wait, I love questions.
Hi. I was just wondering, so what made you choose Scheme or other than other languages, and what advantages did you feel while you made it? And which scheme is that you have made? I mean, made use of? There are many schemes, I think. So could you tell the name?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
I think I could. How long have you got? The silly answer is because Scheme is the best language. But that's a way to start a fight. It's a very flexible language. It's very it's positively pleasant to write in, I find. It had the advantage that it had this very simple but very compact implementation, as I mentioned in answer to David's question, that it's possible for the entire implementation of the language to be contained within Beastie's source code and compiled at the same time. So there are multiple implementations of Scheme, that's true. The one I chose, it's not deeply committed to one. It would be possible to use a different one, but for practical reasons it was that particular scheme that I used. Other languages are available, of course, and the obvious language in the tech community nowadays is Lua. And Lua is nice, but I don't have very little experience with it, and I don't get as much fun out of writing that as I do from writing Scheme. So Scheme, yes, it's a slightly niche language. I insist it's not exotic, but not too few people are as enthused about Scheme as I am. If that doesn't sound evasive or slightly mad. Was there another part of that question I've forgotten?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Right.
Any other questions for Norman? Oh, no hands are going up, Norman, so thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your attention. And I look forward to reports of it breaking in the real world.